Thank you, Ron, and thank you, everybody. Excited to be here. I love the opportunity to speak to this group and love the opportunity to hear about different solutions, different people, different perspectives. Super valuable. And Ron, I'm going to ask you to mute your microphone because we've got some echo on your side, please. Awesome, much better. So thank you for that, Ron. So again, thank you. Super excited. I'm Carlos Sousa. I lead our Azure Data and AI team for the East US at Microsoft. Before being at Microsoft for the last 3 years, I was actually in the industry building solutions on top of the Microsoft Azure stack. I did that for 5-6 years at the Fortune 500 level, and I did that as part of a startup building on top of Azure, specifically data warehousing, BI, machine learning solutions for a couple of years. If I had to summarize the theme for this presentation, is everything that we're hearing about today is amazing. And back to Ron's point a couple minutes ago, my focus as from a practical background, being a Microsoft customer before being a Microsoft employee, is I know how hard it can be to scale the impact of AI in the context of real business setting. We know that a minimal amount of people in a certain given organization are really gonna understand and have the skill set that we need for us to go as deep as we need to from an ML AI standpoint. And so my big point today is, how do we make AI real for the majority of the people in an organization? How do we make it real to analysts? How do we make it real to developers? How do we make it real to the people that don't have a data science background in order to maximize and scale the impact of AI? So what that really means from a presentation standpoint is I'm gonna be focusing on two things. The 3 dimensions to AI maturity. So I want to give you a better idea when at the strategic level I'm talking to my customers, what kinds of questions I'm hearing and what kind of themes we're hearing from an AI maturity standpoint. When I say an organization is AI mature, what does that mean? And how can I talk to my leadership about AI maturity in a way that it makes it concrete, actionable, and real? And then the second piece is I want to focus most of our time really talking about the AI journey. We know that your AI journey is not really going to start going from 0 to highly technical Python scripts or from 0 to highly technical, highly complex custom AI models. We believe that there's a journey that you can follow where even if you're not ready for full-blown custom AI, you can still leverage AI to scale impact and gain new insights. So that's where I'm gonna start today, and that's really what I'm gonna cover. Where I wanna make sure that we start is with this concept of AI maturity. And I call this and my next slide some of the most stolen CIO slides that I've seen. The reason why is I think it makes it real for people when we talk about AI maturity and organizations that are tapping the most value in the context of AI. This model in my mind makes it real. And the reason why is it focuses on 3 dimensions. So what we see from companies that are getting the most business value out of ML and AI is we see 3 different dimensions of focus. One is around digitization and digitization. And for me, this is first and foremost. The first is each of these organizations that have a strong commitment to the AI, a strong focus, strong business value from AI, they understand what their data looks like. And they've done historical efforts to digitize as much of that effort or that data as possible. The second piece is from a commitment standpoint. So these are organizations where they are embracing and supporting local POCs and local efforts, but there's an organization-wide commitment from a C-suite standpoint that really makes it clear to the organization we're going to succeed in our AI journey. And the final piece is the technical piece. They're building the capabilities to be able to span this effort. So from a strategic standpoint, if you are a technology leader, technology manager, technology influencer, having conversations with your leadership, with your C-suite or with your board, and you're trying to understand, how do I make AI real? What kind of investments should I be asking for? And what should I be doing today to make AI real? I would start with this. How can I drive higher digitization? How can I drive higher commitment within the organization? And how can I drive higher capabilities, which we'll talk tactically about today? And then a couple of things, we do see sort of a 4-step discrete journey from an AI maturity standpoint, where we see that it starts with just questioning what AI is, how to apply it. It typically starts with ideating use cases. It moves to a POC approach. It evolves into, okay, I see the value at the POC level. Now I want to scale it, and we go through some growing pains. I start experimenting, POCing, scaling, and then I'm mature when I'm actually getting business value out of that effort. So again, for me, the key point of this slide is if you're asking something of your business or you want to make the AI journey real, these 3 dimensions are a great point for you to start. So and then the second thing that I'll say before I go into the AI journey, which is where I want to spend most of my time, is everything starts, what we hear from customers, and when we understand customers that have been successful in their AI journey and customers who have failed in their AI journey, there's one piece that becomes very, very evident, which is the people that started with the most complexity and AI on focus on the AI and the models themselves. When they started that way, they may not have beaten the basics or gotten the basics right. And that could have led to successful POCs, but lack of scaling capability. What we see in the most successful efforts is everything starts with a modern data platform. And I know that this modern data platform is sort of an industry term that doesn't really mean anything. So I just like to make that real and say, when you hear a modern data platform, my point of view is that's one hub for all data, that's support for diverse data types, unlimited scale, familiar tools and ecosystem, and low cost of ownership. So I always like to start with or I always like to touch on this piece. This is a key differentiator on successful versus unsuccessful projects. Is successful projects bring the modern data platform and a modern data estate, like we call it in the Microsoft ecosystem, as the basis for your AI journey. So start with the basis, start with the foundation. When you get the foundation right, everything else becomes easier. So now that I've spent sort of 8-9 minutes talking about the strategy, I want to make this real for everybody. So I keep talking about the AI journey. I keep talking about how we can expand our reach, how we can increase our scale. And how we think of this is we see the AI journey, again, as a 4-step process. And we believe that even if you're not ready today to spin a Databricks cluster and do advanced analytics and advanced AI and ML model development, you can still get a ton of value from AI. And where could it start? You could start with something simple. For example, your organization today probably has a business intelligence tool. And I'm going to use the Microsoft Business Intelligence Toolkit for my demo. But this is, if you're using any advanced leader business intelligence tool, you're likely going to be getting the same value. And one of the things that people don't many times know is many existing BI tools already have embedded AI capabilities. So I'll give you a very common example. Power BI is one of the leading BI tools in the world right now. And one of the things that people, again, not many people know is, yes, you've got your common BI dashboard capability. Let's say that this is an executive dashboard. I can very clearly see all my data in one place. And this is cool, and this is awesome, and this helps me run my business. But we believe that the future of AI is not a 40-inch screen with a massive dashboard. We believe that the future of AI is insight. And so how this could help me is, I'll give you a couple examples. AI or Power BI has an embedded quick insight capability where I could go, let's say that I'm a business decision maker and I look at my actual versus target revenue, and my actual revenue is very clearly missing versus my target revenue. Typically, what I would do in the context of BI is I would start going into each of these reports, diving deep into this, trying to guess, forming hypotheses, and identifying what it is that could potentially be a problem. Now, with AI built in into Power BI, I could literally go into this style. I could say view insights, and behind the scenes, what this is doing is Power BI is tapping into Azure AI, Azure machine learning, and is giving me a number of insights about my data that could potentially explain why I'm not hitting my target. And some of these may be, really obvious. Like, for example, if I look at my actual revenue versus closing stage, that's not very important. That's not very valuable. But as we start scrolling down, we start seeing some really interesting things. So for example, if I look at this insight, it tells me, hey, you're missing target, but it's really because of this one deal that you closed or this one account that is not hitting your metric. The rest is perfectly okay and is very well clustered on your target versus your actuals. So now, as a business decision maker and a business manager, business leader, I can change my approach from spending, 2 or 3 hours looking through all my data to identify where I should be solving my problem. I can now hyper focus and say, okay, I've got one deal that is tearing everything apart, that is really biasing my results. Let me go ahead and dive deep into it. And similarly, I see other ones that tell me, hey, even from a discounting standpoint, most of your deals are following a very straight correlation. There's one deal that was not, or two deals that the size of the deal and the estimated discount were not in line. I would investigate those. So again, this is a great example of how without writing a single line of AI, a single line of Python, single line of anything, I was just able to leverage AI capability built into my business intelligence tooling, which most organizations are going to have, to leverage AI for my advantage. A second example could be, we know that not everybody's going to be able to develop their own Power BI dashboards or BI dashboards. So one of the things that we do is we embedded Q&A AI capability into our Power BI report, where I could say, hey, show me the top sources, marketing sources by average conversion rate, for example. And now it tells me, okay, you've got all your marketing sources here. They're sorted by conversion rate. And if I'm developing a report, I could even say in a pie chart, and Power BI behind the scenes is leveraging this Q&A NLP capability to develop a new visualization that I could just tap into, and I could pin to my dashboard. So this is another example of how built-in AI into a business intelligence tool already helps me get more capability, already helps me maximize my capability. I'll give you one last example from a BI standpoint. We've got, for example, one of the most difficult things can be when you've got a specific product or solution, or you're running a specific business and you get handwritten or user input reviews, such as a hotel. One of the biggest things for you to do, or most difficult things for you, can be to really identify insight from that unstructured data. Now, you could do this with ML AI tooling without a problem, but what if you don't have that skill set? Again, Power BI, I could input my recommendation with pictures, and I could get a set of insights from this unstructured data, okay? So that's just an example. Back to the AI journey, when I think of what can I do with my business intelligence tool today without learning Python, without learning advanced ML AI capability, that I could do more, okay? The second piece is, we see the other part that many people miss, that I always like to remind my customers, is a big portion of value or a big portion of progress in your AI journey is going to come from people just getting comfortable with AI, okay? Getting comfortable with machine learning. And an example that I always use as well is today, people don't realize that one of the most commonly SaaS used applications in the world, like Microsoft PowerPoint, use Azure AI, Azure Machine Learning. A great example is everybody says that sometimes I've gotten feedback that my PowerPoint slides can be great. The truth is I haven't put together a PowerPoint slide in probably a year, okay? The reason why is what I do is I say, for example, agenda, we're gonna talk about ML topic 1, AI is topic 2, and what I do is I use design ideas, which is a PowerPoint interface to Azure AI, Azure Machine Learning, and it very easy shows me here's what a beautiful slide could look like based on what is visually appealing to people. Now, this is a very simple example. This is something that everybody's probably familiar with, but my point is this is how we start thinking of AI as something that everybody's using, not something that only data scientists can use. And then the last thing that I want to show, or a couple of things that I want to show. So we have this concept of as we climb this maturity curve, we're unlocking more and more and more value. So we start with AI built-in capability into my business intelligence tooling. I go into AI built-in capability in my software as a service applications. I then go into this a notion of AI accelerators, which is, for example, for Microsoft, and this is the same with many of the people that we'll be talking today, you've got this concept of let's package the most common high value, low hanging fruit use cases that we see AI and ML for, and let's package them into a solution that is very easy for people to use. And we call that AI accelerators. An example of that is we did this with, if you remember, a few years ago, the JFK files, the literal PDF scanned JFK documents were made available to the public, okay? One of the things that we did was we said that's a great opportunity for us to save time and really leverage what we call what we call our Azure knowledge mining capability to digest that information. So what we did here, this is an app that allows us to navigate the original JFK file. So I'll kind of walk you through really quick what this could look like. I could start with just searching the name of the person, right? So Oswald. What this is doing behind the scenes, it's going through every JFK document and every JFK file, and it's actually tagging them with the most common terms, okay? And you can notice that some of this is typewritten, some of this is handwritten, some of this is pictures, some of these are aliases, but what it's doing is it's tagging each of these behind the scenes so that I understand what are the most common references in this document, okay? The second thing that it does is we leverage the power of non-relational databases behind the scenes to establish clusters of information and insight that would be interesting for us to understand. So for example, some of what we see here, which is a very common insight with AI, is some of it may be obvious, right? When I see a cluster of Oswald and a cluster of Lee Harvey, that doesn't really tell me anything, right? But one of the things that they noticed throughout this exercise is, hey, now I have this cluster of a Duran, okay, which is not necessarily obvious. So I can now go to the intersection of Oswald and Duran and start identifying in documents where these two intersect, what am I seeing that is really calling my attention, okay? And I start seeing things like, Cuba, Mexico, New York City, Congress, classified information. I've got all these things where I can now say, let me look at the intersection between New York City, Oswald, and Duran. And now I've got 20 to 25 documents that I can really hyper focus on to try to get the right level of insight. So my point here is we know that organizations are sitting on gold mines of paper documents. We know getting insights out of those can be extremely hard. What we did is we packaged this into what we call a cognitive search or knowledge mining product or solution built into Azure, ready to go as an Azure AI Accelerator that packages the key components in here for maximum impact and for quick impact. Okay, so this is the notion of an Azure AI Accelerator. That's another opportunity, and it's really awesome that we even have a GitHub repository and a full explanation to how it works. But the key point for me here is understanding, again, that's another way where even if I'm not an expert in Python, even if I'm not a data scientist, I can leverage a packaged quote unquote accelerator solution to impact and leverage the value of AI. And then one more thing that I want to make sure everybody understands is again, the beauty of cloud, and this is Microsoft or many other clouds, is you've got strong collaboration within the community. So another way that I could leverage these accelerators and climb the AI maturity journey is I could go into what we call the Azure AI Gallery, and I literally see experiments that people are putting together. For example, if I want to understand retail customer churn prediction, I've got an experiment right here. It takes me to this landing site, and I could even view this code or even take this code back to a specific Azure Machine Learning GitHub repository, or even take it directly into my Azure Machine Learning space. So again, another way that I can leverage an Azure Accelerator for this. So the last piece here is what the rest of the Microsoft speakers and many of our other speakers are going to be touching on, which is custom AI. And so custom AI is everything you're going to be hearing about. It is, of course, where you can get maximum levels of customization, maximum levels of value. But the point for me is I hope that with what you've seen today, you get a flavor and you get an understanding that there are quite a bit of flavors of AI and AI opportunities where you could be tapping into the value of this technology without becoming a data scientist, without having a data scientist tool set, just using the tooling that you use every single day. So that's really what I have for today. It's a practical view on leveraging AI. It's a method and a framework for climbing the AI maturity curve. And it's something that I'm deeply passionate about. So if at any point anybody has any questions or just wants to better understand these solutions, better understand just the approach, I'm always happy to discuss, and I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to speak to you.